My dear friend, the rain that fell that night was not a gentle thing. It was a creature with teeth biting through Logan Mitchell's jacket to find the hollows between his ribs, settling deep in his 68-year-old bones, as if it meant to make a home there. And even after all his years, he could not turn away from a sound like the one that found him, a low, fractured cry, almost human were it not for the ragged edge that scraped the air like metal on stone. You see, it had been 4 years that Logan had called that cabin his solitary world. 4 years since his Patricia had passed. 4 years of rooms that held only echoes of mornings that bled into one another and nights that fell like a sudden curtain. Somewhere in that quiet expanse of time, the days had lost their names, but that sound, oh, that sound made him feel every single second. His beloved dog Bear, a wise old shepherd mix with a muzzle of silver, and the ache of arthritis in his hips slowly lifted his head from the threadbare rug. He offered no bark, only a deep knowing stare toward the Cascade woods, a stillness that always comes before the world changes. Now, I need you to just be here with me for a moment. Picture yourself in your late 60s, a life lived now quiet in the Oregon mountains, and you hear a sound from the forest that your heart knows should not exist. A sound like pure pain, wrapped in a shroud of terror. What do you do? Because Logan Mitchell had but 30 seconds to make a choice, and the one he made would forever alter what he believed walked in the deep, secret places of the woods. Before we follow him into that darkness, would you do me a small kindness and touch that subscribe button? This little corner of the world is for sharing true stories, the kind that make you wonder about the soul of things. And believe me, my friend, after you hear Logan's story, you'll want to stay for what comes next. The sound breathed through the trees again closer, this time a chilling whisper meant only for him. Logan was already at the coat rack, moving with the quiet purpose of a man who understood the difference between fear to be respected and fear to be dismissed. Tonight, he was not dismissing it. He paused at the door, his arm sliding into the sleeve of his heavy canvas jacket, the one that even after all this time still held the faintest memory of his Patricia's lavender soap, and he took the flashlight from its hook beside a calendar still turned to April, though May was already soft upon the land. His hands, weathered and true, rested on the latch for a heartbeat. These were hands that had built a life, mended what was broken, and held his wife's as she took her final, gentle breath. Hands that sometimes trembled now, when he wished they wouldn't. His gaze fell upon his old veterinary bag. It was made of green canvas, its corners soft with wear, its zipper a stubborn friend you had to coax. For 32 years that bag had been his companion on calls to ranches and farms all across Deschutes County. He'd been retired for 6 years now, but some loves become a part of you. Some things are the very bones you build your soul around. Bear's ears remained still, but his soulful eyes followed Logan's every move. There was no growl, no whine, only a silence that spoke volumes of trust and concern. The woods were a world awash. The earth gave way beneath his every step, the mud clinging to his boots like a memory of boyhood of helping his father check trap lines some 50-odd years ago, back when these mountains held secrets people honored instead of trying to own. The path he knew so well, the one he'd taken to tend to injured deer or lost livestock, was now leading him toward something utterly unknown. The forest wore a different silence tonight. It was not a peaceful hush, but a listening one. The great trees leaned in like solemn confidants, every pine needle heavy with cold, with a profound sense of waiting. His flashlight cut a fragile beam that surrendered to the mist just a few feet ahead. It was never enough light, was it? But it was all he had, and pride, my friend, is a stubborn, burning thing. Even at 68, with knees that sang a song of complaint each morning and a heart that sometimes danced to a rhythm the doctor warned him about, Logan Mitchell was not a man who turned back. That sorrowful sound drew him deeper down into a natural basin where the rain gathered in dark pools. His boots slid on the slick stone. His breath came in shorter bursts, a quiet curse to the altitude, to his age, to anything that reminded him his body was writing promises his spirit couldn't always keep. And then he saw it. There, beneath the sacred shelter of the towering pines, a massive form was curled upon the earth. It was still, but it was so deeply alive. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, frantic waves, and each breath it drew sounded like the world was being torn through rusted blades. And in that moment, Logan Mitchell forgot how to breathe. The creature was covered in wet, matted fur, dark and slicked with rain and mud. But even through the disarray and the faint and trembling light, he could see the unmistakable swell of a distended belly, taut and full of life. It was labor. Not just pain, you see. It was the sacred, terrible work of labor. His mind, blessed, did what our minds do when faced with the impossible. It reached for an explanation. A bear, perhaps a grizzly, he thought. But no bear he had ever known grew to such a scale. The shape of it was a beautiful, heartbreaking mystery. The proportions were unlike anything he'd ever seen. Everything about it was so profoundly wrong that his stomach tightened and his pulse began to beat a frantic drum against his temples. He did not move. He did not step closer. He would not dare to break the spell. Then the darkness shifted. Not the shape on the ground, my friend, but something behind it. It stepped out from the trees as if the forest itself had decided to unlatch a piece of its own soul. A figure taller than any man Logan had ever laid eyes on, and he had known many tall men in his day. Its shoulders were broad enough to eclipse the slivers of moonlight that fought through the canopy, its chest rising and falling in deep, powerful breaths. Logan's hand instinctively went to his belt, to the worn handle of the old knife he carried more from habit than intention. His fingers found it, and there they found their calm. This being offered no growl, no charge. It simply stepped between Logan and the creature on the ground, and it stood there. A guardian, for a single breathless second that held all of eternity within it. Logan braced his heart for violence, for the fury of teeth or claws or whatever secrets this magnificent thing held. But it never came. Instead, the towering figure, unquestionably male if such a word could even apply to a being like this, lowered its incredible gaze. Not to Logan's face, but to his hands. Or to be more precise, to the old canvas bag he carried. Something in its ancient eyes locked onto that bag. They were dark, intelligent eyes. Eyes that seemed to understand what that bag represented, as if it had seen one like it in a half-forgotten dream, or a genetic memory that flowed deeper than any conscious thought. The stare was not a challenge. My friend, it was a question asked from the depths of a desperate heart. Logan had delivered calves in the heart of blizzards. He had stitched the wounds of horses that fought to kick him. He had gently pulled porcupine quills from dogs who should have known better. He had held countless animals as they passed, and he had felt the precise, quiet moment that life decides to let go. 32 years of that life teaches you a language beyond words. It teaches you how to read fear, how to recognize trust, and how to know with all your soul when another being is asking for your help. He lowered himself to his knees, a slow and deliberate prayer. Not so close as to invade her space, just near enough for her to see the soul in his eyes. My own knees ached in protest, an old arthritis that had whispered louder since my Patricia passed, as if my very bones were mourning her. And when my voice finally came, it was a quiet thing in the rain, not meant to soothe nor laced with fear. It was simply my truth. My name is Logan. I whispered. I am here to help you. I knew the words themselves were likely just sounds, but the heart hears more than language, doesn't it? It has always been that way. You can weave a lie with words, but you can never hide the truth in your tone. I set my bag upon the damp earth, keeping my hand open and in full view as I slowly drew the zipper back. The sound of its metal teeth parting felt like a thunderclap in the sacred quiet. The rain seemed to hold its breath with me, softening to a mist, while in the distance a creek sang its ancient gentle song to the stones. I moved toward her, then this fallen mother. For she was a mother, I could see that now. Her eyes fluttered open just a fraction bloodshot, and rimmed with a weariness that had settled deep into her spirit. The scent of her life rose to meet me, a heavy, thick perfume of iron and musk of the wild earth, and something else, something ancient and utterly unknown, but beneath it all a trinity I knew by heart, fear, pain, and a fragile whisper of hope. My hands found my stethoscope steady now, guided by a memory that lived in my muscles. I pressed the cool metal gently against her swollen abdomen, closed my eyes, and just listened. And then I heard it. A heartbeat. And then another. Two, you see. But one was a strong, steady drum. The other was a faint, frantic echo, a life struggling to hold on. One little soul was still fighting. The other was already growing quiet. I bit the inside of my cheek, willing my own rising panic back into its cage. After my Patricia died, I became an expert at that, at tucking my feelings into dark corners where they couldn't get in the way. Some might call it unhealthy. I have always called it survival. My hands began to move, needing no instruction from my mind, all those years of veterinary work surfacing like a second nature, like breathing. I looked up once more into the depths of her eyes. There was no plea within them, just a slow, accepting blink, a quiet surrender. It was a gift of trust so profound it felt heavier than any weight I had ever carried in my life. I knew in that moment what this was about. If I were to walk away, that tiny heartbeat would fade. Perhaps both of them would. The forest keeps no headstones, you know. It wouldn't remember their names. It would simply swallow them whole, and by morning there would be nothing but the silence of a story left untold. I reached back into my bag for gloves and gauze, knowing in my heart it would never be enough. It is never enough, is it? But it had to be. Her mate had not moved. He watched over us, his presence, a silent vigil, not a threat. He watched like a soul who understood how delicate these moments are, like someone who had lost things too, like someone who knew that trust is the most dangerous and beautiful gift you can ever give. And there, in that sacred stillness beneath the shelter of dripping leaves, Logan Mitchell knelt beside something the world says cannot be, and I chose to stay. If you were to ask me why I couldn't give you a simple answer, it wasn't for proof or for bravery or for a story to tell. Good heavens, who would I even tell my children call from California a twice-a-month duty? My dearest friends are either resting peacefully or fighting their own last battles with time. No. It was for the ache in my chest that refused to let me go. The very same weight I felt when my Patricia first got sick, the weight that pulled me to every last appointment, even when the doctors said there was no point. It is the weight of being human in a world that too often forgets what that means. Because sometimes, my friend, the forest offers no answers. It offers only a moment, only a choice. And sometimes, that is everything. The rain began to fall a little harder then. I wiped the water from my eyes and set my hands to the work of hope. The morning had barely begun to paint the wet gray sky when I returned, my boots still slick with the memory of the night. My heart led me first to the clearing. They were still there. They were still breathing. My next act was to take up my old canvas backpack, repacking it with fresh gauze, clean shears, a bandage still sealed in its promise, and 2 small vials of sedative I keep for wounded deer. I considered bringing more, but this was not a sterile clinic. This was a prayer measured in heartbeats. I looped a length of thick, smooth, braided rope over my shoulder, a familiar weight I'd used so many times to steady a nervous soul, and took my worn leather gloves from their nail by the porch. My good boy Bear whined at the door, his eyes asking to join me. "Not this time, my friend," I told him, and my voice felt a decade older than it had yesterday. "You stay here. You guard our home." His ears drooped with understanding, but he obeyed. Such a good dog. My Patricia chose him from the shelter 8 years ago. She used to say every man needs something to care for after his working days are done. My love, she was right about most things, and with the thought of her to guide me, I stepped back out into the wet waiting world. In that moment, my dear, every sound in the woods felt as if it were happening inside my own heart. The birds had fallen silent, and the wind dared not whisper. There was only a hush, like a sacred waiting room, where the world holds its breath to see if life or shadow will claim the day. I moved with a quiet reverence, letting my weight settle before each step. It wasn't just fear, though fear was a passenger on this journey, but because the woods felt more ancient and tangled in my old age, or perhaps my love I had simply grown slower to match their wisdom. The journey to the basin took a full 20 minutes, a path that should have taken 10, but my knees whispered their long story with every step, and the trail was slick with a kind of holy water. Her guardian was there, a statue of devotion precisely where I had left him. His eyes, my dear, followed Logan's approach, not with hostility, but with a deep knowing caution, as if reading the very pages of my soul. Logan raised his hands, a simple offering showing the bag. "It's only me again," he murmured, his voice a soft thread in the silence. "I came back, just as I promised." I don't know if the creature understood the words, or simply the heart from which they came, but a quiet letting go rippled through his stance, not a surrender, just an acceptance. But she, my love, was fading. A fever fire had taken hold. You could see it in the tremor of her body, could smell its bittersweet perfume on the damp air, a sign that the darkness was gathering. As he knelt beside her, his old bones sang a creaking song so loud it startled her protector. Logan froze, a breath held in the quiet, and waited until the great creature's trust settled once more. "Easy now." Logan whispered the words, a prayer for them and for himself. "I am only here to help." He laid his hand upon her brow, and it was like touching a flame. Her breath was a shallow, frantic tide, and beneath his other hand he could feel the faint, desperate flutter of the little one still trapped within a weak and faltering rhythm. The hourglass. My friend was almost empty. Logan's hands had welcomed life into this world countless times, calves turned the wrong way, lambs tangled in the passage. But this was different. This was a sacred mystery, an anatomy his hands had never known. And yet the heart of the story is always the same, isn't it? Life yearning to begin, a shadow trying to bar the way, and someone with steady hands standing in the threshold between them. He opened his bag and laid his tools on a clean cloth, a small altar in the heart of the woods. The male watched this ritual, this careful unfolding of a lifetime of keeping calm, when the world screamed, when all that stood between the light and the dark was competence and a whisper of grace. He cleaned his hands as best he could, pulling on the gloves like a priest preparing for a rite, and then reached in gently to understand the shape of the miracle to come. Turned wrong. Of course the little one was turned wrong. Life so rarely chooses the easy path for its arrival. All right. He breathed a promise spoken more to the universe than to anyone. Let us see what we can do here. His hands began a delicate dance, a conversation of touch, gentle yet certain coaxing and guiding. And from her a sound tore through the silence, a raw note of anguish that needed no translation in any language. Her guardian took a heavy step forward. Logan did not look up. He couldn't. His entire world was in his hands. She's going to be all right, he promised, his voice a steady anchor. We just need to... There. And then he felt it, a subtle shift in the darkness. The small body beginning to turn with an agonizing slowness that seemed to stretch time itself into a prayer. Sweat and rain mingled on his face, a holy water for his service. His back screamed its protest, his knees felt like shattered glass, but his hands, my love, his hands were still. That was all that mattered. Come on, he whispered, an invitation to the soul that hesitated on the brink. Come on, little one. And with another gentle turn, the world righted itself. The little one found the path. The mother's breath deepened, finding a rhythm as old as the earth, as pure instinct took the reins. And then, in the gray dawn light, with the rain falling as soft as a memory, the impossible bloomed right before his eyes. The baby was born, so small, wrapped in the sacred fluids of its birth, but breathing, moving, utterly and astonishingly alive. Logan gently cleared the little one's airways and rubbed its tiny chest. A small mouth opened and offered its first sound to the world, a thin, reedy cry that was the most real and beautiful note he had ever heard. The father made a sound, then a low rumble from the center of his being. It was not a threat, but something Logan knew in his own soul, for it was the same sound that had escaped his own lips 36 years ago, the moment he first held his daughter, and understood that his heart now beat outside his own body. The mother reached for her baby, pulling it close with a primal grace. And in that moment, looking into her eyes, Logan saw a truth that shattered all boundaries of species of logic, of everything he thought he knew. He was looking into the endless, undeniable heart of a mother's love, and it was the very same look he had seen on his beloved Patricia's face, on his own mother's, on the face of every soul who had ever understood what it was to bring a new life into a world already so heavy with goodbye. Logan finally let himself sink back, his hands beginning to tremble now, the fire of adrenaline leaving only ashes behind, making him feel hollow, and so very tired. He was too old for this, my friend, too old for midnight rescues and births that defied all logic, for encounters with beings that belonged to whispered legends. And yet against every odd, against all reason, he had done it. He had truly done it. The father creature drew near, his movements slow and deliberate. Logan grew still, a quiet tension in his bones, but he didn't reach for his knife. He just sat there, an old man cloaked in the storm and the miracle of birth, as this impossible being leaned down and looked at him, truly saw him. Oh, those eyes! They were dark and deep and filled with an intelligence that shimmered with something that felt like gratitude, or maybe it was respect. Perhaps it was the silent acknowledgement of a debt that could never be repaid in words. Then, with a slowness that spoke volumes, the creature reached out and gently placed one enormous hand upon Logan's shoulder. The touch lasted but a heartbeat yet. In that single pulse, Logan felt a warmth he thought was buried forever with his Patricia. A true connection. A quiet promise that he was not alone. That the universe, in all its vast and terrible beauty, had witnessed his small act of kindness and nodded in approval. The hand lifted away. The father gathered his small family, and as silently as they had come, they simply melted back into the embrace of the trees, leaving not even a whisper behind. Logan remained there for a long while, long after they had vanished as the rain softened to a hush and the first blush of dawn began to paint the clouds. Somewhere in the quiet, a bird decided it was finally safe enough to sing. He looked down at his own hands, still painted with the story of the night, still shaking with the memory of it all. Hands that had held both the beginning and the end. Hands that were growing old, that had just done something that felt like a dream. "Well," he whispered into the stillness of the clearing. "Patricia, my love, you simply wouldn't believe the night I've had." Her name was a tender ache in his throat, as it always was, as it probably always would be. He began to gather his tools to pack his bag, rising to his feet with a groan so loud it would have made him blush if anyone had been there to hear it. His back ached, his knees complained. Every part of him felt the weight of his years. But you see, he was smiling. For the first time in 4 long years, a true smile graced the face of Logan Mitchell. Because sometimes, my friend, the forest doesn't offer explanations. It just offers a moment, a choice, a gentle reminder that there is still magic woven into the fabric of this world, if you're only brave enough or maybe foolish enough to answer its call. He started the long, familiar walk home to his cabin. Bear would be there waiting with a wagging tail. Coffee would need to be made. Life would continue on just as it always had. But something deep inside him had shifted. The heavy cloak of grief he'd worn since Patricia left hadn't vanished, not entirely. It just felt lighter. And then he heard it carried on the wind like a secret, a sound that was part song, part prayer, part goodbye. Logan didn't look back. He knew in his heart that he didn't need to. Some things you see are not meant for the eyes. They are meant only for the heart. And some things you carry with you for all your remaining days, not as a burden, but as the quiet, certain proof that you lived, that you mattered, that when the moment came you chose to offer a hand instead of walking away. And isn't that all any of us can truly hope for in the end? 3 sunrises came and went before Logan felt the pull to return to the basin. 3 days of an ordinary life of coffee on the porch with Bear at his feet, the quiet of the cabin no longer feeling like emptiness, but like a gentle, holding peace. He told himself he wasn't checking on them, just a simple curiosity, he said, telling himself all sorts of things that weren't quite the truth. The clearing was a silent stage when he arrived, as if the rain had washed the world clean. There was no sign they had ever been there. Nature had already reclaimed its own. But there was something left behind. A small pile of stones arranged with a care that spoke of a mind and a heart, a pattern that whispered of intention. And nestled in the center, a single white feather so pristine, so perfect, it was a beacon of impossible purity. Logan gently lifted it, holding it up to the morning light. It was larger than any bird feather he had ever known, its very texture and form feeling like something from another world, a gift from a dream. A parting gift, he thought, or a whispered promise. Perhaps it was both. He slipped it into his pocket, and its weight, though small, felt as profound as a star against his palm. "You're welcome," he whispered to the silent trees, a benediction on the wind. "Just take care of each other." The pines seemed to whisper back on the breeze, and Logan, well, he chose to hear it as their solemn reply. Summer arrived like a slow, golden promise to the Cascades, the kind of season that makes you believe winter was only a dream. Logan spent his days in that gentle rhythm, tending to small things, taking long walks, and confiding in a dog who never minded that he was also talking to ghosts. He kept the memory of that night sacred, a treasure just for him. Who, after all, could he share it with his son, would gently suggest a talk with his doctor. His daughter would be consumed with a quiet fear for his mind. And the few dear friends he had left would just offer that sad, knowing look and steer the conversation to safer shores. So he held it close, a secret kept in his heart, and in a drawer by his bed where the feather rested. Sometimes he would take it out just to feel its impossible softness and know he hadn't dreamt the whole thing. But his body knew the truth, didn't it? It was a faithful record of the night holding the memory and the ache of his back and the stiffness of his hands. It remembered how his heart had hammered against his ribs and our bodies, my friend. They never lie about a thing like that. And in the deep quiet of the night, when sleep was a distant shore, his heart would go out to them. He'd wonder if the little one was thriving, if the mother's strength had returned, if the father was standing guard over his precious family. He loved to imagine them out there, a secret family living under the stars, not just surviving, but flourishing, a quiet, powerful answer to a world that says such wonders cannot be. This thought brought him a peace that prayer never could, a comfort more profound than all the gentle, well-meaning words that followed him after his Patricia was gone. For he had been given a truth to witness, not a sign from God nor a glimpse of angels or the hereafter, but evidence of something just as holy. He had seen with his own eyes that compassion is the truest magic, that simply showing up is a grace, that choosing to stay when every fiber of your being screams to run, that my dear, is what matters more than anything else in this world. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Or perhaps, my friend, that was everything. But as the summer began to wane, late August brought a different kind of visitor to Logan's door. There were two of them dressed in khaki uniforms with Forest Service badges that shone, but their official smiles never quite reached their eyes. "Mr. Mitchell?" the older one asked. Logan placed him in his 40s with a sharp crew cut and a soldier's stance. "My name is Ranger Davis. This is Ranger Thompson. We'd just like to ask you a few questions." Logan simply leaned against the frame of his door as Bear rumbled a low warning from within. A sound Logan gently hushed. "And what might those questions be about?" "We've received some unusual reports from this part of the forest," Davis explained, flipping open a small notebook. "Talk of strange tracks, peculiar sounds. So we're just talking to the local residents. Have you noticed anything at all out of the ordinary these past few months?" His mind returned to that night in a heartbeat, to the pouring rain, the sacred blood, the impossible child, and the deep, silent gratitude he saw in those ancient eyes. "Can't say that I have," he answered, his voice calm and even. "It stays pretty quiet out this way. That's why I like it." Thompson, the younger one, took a step forward. He had an eagerness about him, the kind that always made a person like Logan feel uneasy. "You were a veterinarian, isn't that right? You've worked with animals nearly your whole life." "That's true," Logan affirmed. "Then you of all people would recognize unusual tracks. Any strange animal signs?" "That would depend entirely on the animal, wouldn't it?" And that was when Davis and Thompson shared a glance, the kind of look that passes between two people who believe they know a secret you don't. "Mr. Mitchell," Davis said, his voice lowering a little, "we have evidence suggesting something very large is moving through these woods, something that doesn't fit any known species. If you have seen anything, and I mean anything at all, it is vital that you share it with us." Logan met the ranger's gaze and held it, his own eyes as clear and steady as a mountain lake. "Like I said before, I haven't seen anything unusual at all." The lie felt like a stone in his mouth, my friend, but some truths are too precious to be spoken aloud. Davis gave a slow nod, but his eyes told a different story. I could feel his doubt, but a feeling isn't proof, is it? "All right, then," Davis sighed, handing me a small card. "But if you remember anything, call this number. Doesn't matter the time. I promised him I would a quiet little lie to end the conversation, and just like that, they were gone. I watched their truck become a speck down the road, standing there for the longest time with that card in my palm. Then, in the quiet of my kitchen, I held a flame to the card and watched it turn to ash in the sink. Because some things, my dear, are not meant for the light of day. Some mysteries are the sacred heart of the world, and some beautiful, impossible lives deserve to be a secret safe from a world that would only misunderstand. My Patricia would have known just what I mean. She always believed in letting the wild things be and honoring the spaces between what we know and what we don't. "I'll never tell," I whispered to her memory, a promise to the quiet air. "Your secret is safe with me." And I swear the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief in return. Or perhaps it was only the wind. I chose to believe it was the former. September arrived with that first sharp chill in the air, a gentle reminder that winter is always on its way. Time marches on, whether we're ready for it or not. I was out back with the woodpile, a little slower than I used to be, but my heart is still in it when Bear started barking. It was a sound I hadn't heard since that one unforgettable night. I let the axe fall silent, wiping a bead of sweat from my brow, even as the cool air kissed my skin. And there at the edge of the trees, bathed in the soft dappled light, I saw 3 shapes. He was bigger than I remembered, or maybe my memory had softened the truth of him. But there he was, solid and real, a beautiful impossibility. Beside him stood the female, her body now strong and whole. The limp that had haunted my memory was gone, and nestled between them, my friend, stood the child. No longer a tiny thing, but taller now and stronger. Still, you could see the gentle vulnerability of youth in their eyes. They just stood there watching me, a silent communion across the clearing. I lifted my hand, a slow, easy wave, the kind you give to a dear friend you haven't seen in far too long. And the child, in a moment of pure grace, mirrored the gesture, raising one small hand as if to say hello. The father rested a hand on the little one's shoulder, a touch so full of pride and protection, it made my own heart ache with its humanity. Then they turned, and with the quiet grace of beings who belong to the wild, they walked back into the deep green of the forest. I stood there until the woods had swallowed them whole, until the only sounds left were the wind, a distant bird, and the soft, confused whimpers of my dear Bear. "It's okay, boy," I whispered, my voice thick with feeling. "They're okay." Whoa. I went back to my work, but my hands were trembling, not from fear, but with the aftershock of witnessing something sacred. It was gratitude, I think. The overwhelming feeling of being trusted with something so precious, of knowing that in a life filled with its own losses, I was given this moment of pure, impossible grace. Some people, my friend, live their whole lives and never touch magic. They never feel the shiver of a true mystery, never stand at the edge of all they understand and choose to simply believe. But I, Logan Mitchell, I have. And that is something no one can ever take away. And when my time comes, whenever that may be, I'll leave this world knowing I did something that mattered, something that could never be measured or rewarded, only held in the heart. He had ushered a new soul into this world, a tiny spark in a moment when darkness felt all but certain. He had been entrusted with a secret, a beautiful truth that begged to be kept safe. He had proven himself worthy of a faith bestowed upon him by something the world insisted was only a dream. Not a bad final chapter for an old veterinarian, you know. Not bad in the slightest. Winter arrived with a vengeance that year, my friend. An early snow and a cruel ice that made the road a sheet of glass. But Logan, he didn't mind. He had a mountain of firewood, a pantry full of comfort, and his dear bear for company. The days grew shorter, the light more precious. The cabin seemed to draw in around him, but small was never a bad thing. Small was a world you could hold in your hands. Small was safe. His thoughts would drift to them, sometimes wondering how they weathered the frost. But a deep knowing in his heart told him they had been surviving these mountain winters long before men ever walked these paths, and would be long after we are gone. Nature has the most beautiful way of guarding her mysteries, doesn't she? Of veiling what needs to be hidden, of keeping sacred the things that should forever remain so. And Logan, he finally understood that. He felt it in his very soul. Christmas came and went like a soft breath on a window pane. His children called their voices from a different world, offering to fly him to the California sun. He gently declined, using the weather as an excuse. But the truth, my dear, was that he couldn't bring himself to leave. He couldn't bear the thought of missing anything, just in case a little bit of magic decided to visit again. New Year's Eve found Logan on his porch defying the cold. He was wrapped in Patricia's old quilt, a blanket of memories with warm coffee in his favorite mug and Bear resting at his feet. The old year was fading, preparing to give way to the new one at the stroke of midnight. The great wheel just keeps on turning, always turning. He thought of his Patricia of the lifetime they had woven together. The brilliant days, the stormy nights, and all the quiet, simple moments in between. He thought of how much he'd taken for granted, and how deeply he missed it all now that it was just a memory. But his heart also remembered that night, drenched in rain. The choice to stay, the feeling of his hands covered in the miracle of life, and the silent gratitude shining in those ancient dark eyes. An impossible birth, against impossible odds. It was proof, you see, that the world still held on to its wonder. That mystery was still breathing in the quiet places, that there were still moments that asked not for explanation, but simply for faith. Some people, my friend, they spend their whole lives searching for a sign of something more, something beyond the everyday, something to whisper to them that they're not alone in it all. Logan had found it, not in a quiet church or in the pages of a book or in the cold facts of science. He had found it while kneeling in the mud. He found it in the gentle trust of creatures who were never meant to exist. He found it in the simple, profound act of being present, right when his presence mattered most. Midnight arrived on a whisper of wind carrying the faint, muffled sound of distant fireworks. "Happy New Year, Patricia," Logan whispered to the stars. "I'm doing okay. I'm doing better than I thought I would. I found something to live for again. It's hard to explain my love, but you'd like it. You would have loved them." The stars offered no reply, of course, but he never expected them to. Some of the most important conversations we have are one-sided. Some prayers are meant only for the wind. Some words are spoken just because the heart needs to set them free, not because anyone is there to hear. But maybe something was listening. Maybe the old forest heard him. Maybe the mountains tucked his words away to remember. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Spring returned the way it always does, you know. Slow and tentative at first, as if it wasn't quite sure winter was ready to let go. Logan turned 69 that March. The kids called, cards arrived. They spoke of visiting in the summer, though he knew they probably wouldn't. He didn't mind. He had come to understand that some families love each other best across a distance. He'd made his peace with that. He had made his peace with so many things. The arthritis in his hands was worse. The doctor gave him new pills and told him to take it easy. Logan would just nod and then carry on as he always had. Some men, my friend, just don't know the meaning of the words. They weren't built for standing still. April came and washed the world with rain. The forest awoke and dressed itself in green again. It was life returning from its long winter sleep. The circle continuing on. My dear Logan never returned to the basin, you see. There was no need. The story that had unfolded there had found its own gentle conclusion. Some tales are not meant for sequels, and a wise heart knows when to simply close the book. And yet, in the hushed stillness of the deepest night, whispers would drift from the trees. So distant, so faint. Perhaps it was only the wind sighing through the pines or the rustle of some wild creature. But a part of him knew it was something more, and he chose with all his heart to believe in that something more. He held on to the belief that they were still out there, my love, living their lives, raising their young, a quiet rebellion against a world so quick to label them as monsters, to dismiss them as myths, or to call them mistakes. But they were none of those things, not at all. They were simply alive, breathing the same air, surviving the same seasons, doing what every soul on this earth does, protecting their family, nurturing their little ones, and moving through this life with whatever grace they could find. When you truly think about it, my friend, they weren't so different from us after all. Then May arrived, and with it a kind of visitor my dear Logan had never wished for. A woman, perhaps in her 30s, dressed in the sharp lines of the city, with a camera crew trailing her like a shadow. Her voice called out, "Mr. Mitchell," and her smile was a brilliant, hollow thing. "My name is Ashley Roberts," she said, "and I'm creating a film about the unseen creatures of this coast. I was told you've made your home here for a very long time." My Logan simply leaned against the frame of his door, a familiar, solid posture, with his beloved bear standing as a gentle guardian between his world and theirs. He answered softly, "That's right. We're hoping to speak with people about unusual moments." She continued, her eyes flicking to her cameraman. "Encounters that defy explanation. We were wondering if you might share your story with us." And with a quiet finality, he replied, "I don't have a story to tell. Truly." She pressed a folder appearing in her hands like a weapon. "Because we have reports, you see, from the Forest Service. They mention strange tracks found near this land, and we have sources who believe sources can believe whatever they wish." Logan interrupted, his voice holding that same calm, unyielding tone he used for skittish horses. "It doesn't make it the truth." For a moment, Ashley's bright smile wavered. "Mr. Mitchell, if there is something you've seen." His answer was a single unwavering wall. "I haven't." "But, ma'am," he said, his voice kind but clear, "I'm just an old man living a quiet life in these woods. I keep to myself. Whatever it is you're searching for, my friend, it isn't here." And with that, he stepped back inside and gently closed the door. He watched from his window as their world of hurried words and gestures finally faded, and they drove away. My dear Logan waited until the last trace of their van had vanished down the road. Only then did he sit at his kitchen table, feeling the familiar tremble return to his hands. It felt as if the world was shrinking, you see, with its eyes in the sky, its satellites and drones, and its endless cameras. There was nowhere left for secrets to breathe, nowhere left for the wild to simply be. But he held on to a fragile hope, a hope that if enough hearts could choose silence over the spotlight, if enough souls understood that some wonders are meant to remain whispered secrets, then maybe, just maybe, there was still a chance. A chance for that beautiful family hidden deep within the heart of the forest. He went to the drawer and took out the feather, a sacred promise in his palm, and held it up to the gentle light, and he whispered the words again, a vow to the quiet room and to the trees beyond. "I will never tell, I promise you. The secret is mine to keep until my very last day." And oh, my friend, he meant it with every fiber of his being. He understood that some secrets are treasures you guard with your life. that some truths are too sacred to be spoken aloud, and that some bonds, my dear, exist in a place far beyond the need for the world's approval. My dear Logan knew this now. He felt it deep in his bones, a truth as real as the earth beneath his feet. And when the summer came, bringing with it the sweltering heat and the loud clamor of tourists, Logan drew his world in closer. He kept to his cabin, a quiet sentinel, avoiding the town, letting the world come to him only when it must. My dear bear was beginning his long, slow fade, his world shrinking to the size of his bed. The veterinarian, a kind young man who couldn't know Logan, had walked this same road for decades, gently called it age, the simple, unstoppable rhythm of nature. And Logan, he understood this truth in his bones. He knew our bodies are only borrowed vessels. They tire, their hinges rust, and their engines eventually fall silent. It's the one promise we're all given. His thoughts began to drift to the quiet that would follow after Bear's last breath, and then eventually after his own. What would become of this sanctuary? Would his children let it go, or would some developer tame its wild heart? The idea settled in his soul like a stone, heavier than he ever would have admitted. One warm July evening, he sat on the porch with a beer, a small rebellion against his doctor's orders because some rules just asked to be broken, and he watched the sun bleed its colors across the mountain peaks. And oh, the forest was singing its nightly hymn, the final calls of birds, the steady hum of 1,000 tiny wings, and the wind whispering through the pines like the deep, slow breath of the world itself. His heart, as it so often did, turned to Patricia, to their last true conversation, a gift of clarity on one of her good days before the medicine drew its final gentle curtain. "Promise me something, my love." She had whispered, her voice a fragile thread, yet it held the strength of all their years together. And he had answered without a moment's hesitation, "Anything. Don't let the door to your heart close when I'm gone. Don't build walls around yourself. Please stay open to the world. Stay willing." He had given her his word, but it was a promise he had failed to keep, for he had locked every door and shuttered every window of his soul after she left. Until that one impossible night, the one that came with the rain. That night felt as if the storm had found a crack in the walls he'd built, letting a little wonder pour in, opening a part of him he thought was lost for good. He spoke to her then, a soft murmur to the twilight. "I kept my promise, Patricia. It took me so long, my love, but I finally did." Just then, the wind seemed to answer, rising to carry the scent of pine and rich earth and something else, something ancient and wild. And riding on that breeze from the deep heart of the woods came a sound so faint it was almost a memory. It was a low, resonant note that seemed to vibrate in his very chest. It felt like a song. A slow smile touched Logan's lips as he lifted his bottle. "This is for you," he whispered. "To all of you. May you always find sanctuary here, and may you live your long lives in these mountains, forever free from the eyes of men." And the song came again, didn't it? Perhaps a little closer, or maybe his heart was just more open to hearing it clearly. It felt like a response, you know, like a quiet acknowledgement, a gentle farewell and a blessing, all woven into one. Logan drained the last of his beer, his heart at peace. He went inside, let old Bear out for one last look at the stars, secured the doors, and prepared for sleep. He knew tomorrow would arrive as it always did, and the day after, and the one after that. Until, of course, the day it wouldn't. That is the great simple truth of it all, the only truth that truly holds its weight. But in the space between our first breath and our last, there is this beautiful, difficult thing called living. And to live is to show up, to stay rooted when every instinct tells you to flee, to choose compassion over fear. And Logan, he had done that. He knew with a certainty that settled deep in his soul that he would do it all again, and that he realized was enough. In fact, that was everything. But then August arrived, and with it came the kind of news a heart is never truly ready to bear. The young vet's voice was soft on the phone, explaining that Bear's tests revealed a sickness deep and fast-moving. There was nothing more to be done. A few weeks, he said. A month, if they were lucky. Logan whispered his thanks and gently placed the phone back in its cradle. And then he just sat there in the quiet of his kitchen as the world stood still for a very, very long time. My dear Bear was resting in his corner, his graying muzzle settled so gently upon his paws. His eyes still held their light, but oh, they were weary. So very weary. I know, my boy. Logan whispered, his voice a soft murmur. I know. You see, he had walked this path before. It's the unspoken price of love, isn't it? The cost of opening your heart. They leave. In the end, everything we love must go. But my friend, knowing a thing and feeling it are two different worlds. It never ever gets easier. So in the weeks that followed, Logan poured all he had left into his dear Bear, tender bites of steak, unhurried walks where every step was a memory, and long, quiet hours together on the porch. And Bear, in his infinite wisdom, seemed to understand it all. There was a gratitude in his gaze, a profound peace that only creatures so close to the earth can know when their time is near. Then one morning, as September was just beginning to breathe its golden air, my sweet Bear did not rise to greet the day. Logan knelt by his side, his hand a gentle comfort on his old friend's head, and whispered all the words that a heart must speak before it says goodbye. You were the most wonderful company, he murmured. The truest friend my heart has known these last few years. Thank you for staying, for hearing my silence, for being my anchor when the rest of the world had drifted away. And in reply, Bear's tail gave a single faint thump. It was weak, oh yes, but it was a promise, a final deliberate word. And then, my friend, he was free. Logan laid him to rest beneath the great pine behind the cabin, the very one his beloved Patricia had adored, where she would gaze out at the world for hours on end. Watch over him for me, Logan whispered to her, to the wind, to them both. He is the best of boys. And the forest seemed to breathe in reply, perhaps in agreement, or perhaps it was only the sigh of the wind. He returned to the cabin, the simple act of making coffee, a hollow echo in the stillness. As he sat at the table, the silence was a presence, the emptiness a weight in the air. For a moment he considered calling his children, but the thought passed. They had their own worlds to navigate, their own storms to weather. And the idea of another dog? No. His heart couldn't even form the thought. Not yet. Perhaps never again. His mind drifted back to a night of pouring rain, to a birth that felt like a miracle, and a bond forged in impossible trust. You know, some things are meant for us only once. Some moments are captured in time, never to be lived again. A certain kind of grace visits your soul just once, and then it's gone. But sometimes, my friend, once is all you need. That single moment can become the light that guides you through all the darkness that follows. And Logan held that truth close to his heart. He held it with all his might. The season turned as if on a sigh, autumn arriving early to paint the leaves in gold and fire. Frost traced delicate ferns on the window panes as the forest began to draw inward, and Logan prepared alongside it, stalking the wood and checking the generator, his quiet rituals, a mirror of the world outside, getting everything in order. He was alone again. Utterly, and completely. A familiar ache, the same one he knew after his Patricia left. The very state he had promised his heart he would never endure again. But this time was different. You see, being alone was no longer the same as being lonely. Not for him. Not anymore. It was a lesson his heart had finally learned. He understood the difference now. Lonely was that first year without Patricia, a desert of endless days of rooms that echoed with emptiness of a silence so heavy it felt hard to breathe. But this was simply being alone. It was a quiet peace, an acceptance. It was the understanding that solitude isn't a punishment but a sacred space between one love and the next. October arrived with the first whisper of snow, a mere dusting of white. But it was a gentle reminder to Logan that winter in all its forms is always on its way. And so he sat on his porch, wrapped in the warmth of old blankets, a cup of coffee cradled in his hands, watching the world he loved turn to a soft, quiet white. And in that quiet, breathless moment, he saw them. All three of them, my dear, at the edge of the clearing. The child had grown so tall, almost reaching the mother's shoulder, blossoming into the beautiful mystery they were meant to be. They simply stood there for the longest time, you know, not hiding, not afraid, just present, sharing the world with him. The father figure then raised a hand, and the gesture, even across the distance, was as clear as a silent word. It was a farewell, or perhaps it was a thank you. Or maybe it was simply a sacred acknowledgement of everything that had passed between them, of debts paid in kindness, secrets kept in trust, and a bond that was deeply honored. And my dear Logan, he raised his own hand in return, holding it there until his arm ached with the weight of that goodbye. Then, like a dream at dawn, they were gone, melting back into the deep heart of the forest, into its mystery, into those wild places where magic still breathes, if you just know where to look. Logan let his hand fall, and his eyes were glistening. It could have been the winter chill, my friend, or it could have been something else entirely. Go, he whispered, his voice a prayer on the wind. Go far, go deep, stay hidden, my friends, stay safe. The wind seemed to understand, carrying his words away, scattering them like secrets through the pines, letting the ancient forest hear what its heart needed to hear. Logan sat there until the deep cold finally coaxed him inside, where he made more coffee, sat at his table, and just looked at his hands. They were old hands, you see. Scarred hands. Hands that had held both life and death, and every fragile moment in between. They were hands that had mattered, that had done something truly worth doing. And that my love was enough. That would always be enough. Winter then settled in with a fierce tenderness, blanketing the world in 3 feet of snow as temperatures fell below zero. Logan mostly stayed inside, keeping the fire alive and losing himself in books he'd meant to read for years. The cabin was quiet, but it was never empty. The memory of Patricia was there. The spirit of Bear was there. And his secret family in the forest, they were there too. Memory has a weight, you know, a presence, beyond presence. The people and creatures we carry in our hearts become part of the very walls, part of the warmth, part of everything that makes a place a home. Christmas arrived, and Logan's children called. They promised they would visit in the spring, and when he said that would be nice this time, he truly meant it with all his heart. New Year's followed a silent turning of the page, as one year tenderly died, and another was born. Logan found himself reflecting on the year that had passed, on everything that had unfolded, on the man he once was, and the man he was now becoming. Not better, you see, just different, more open, more willing to believe, more able to accept that the world was so much bigger and stranger and more breathtakingly beautiful than he had ever allowed himself to imagine, and more fragile too, more endangered, more in need of souls who understand that not everything is meant to be known or captured or explained away. Some things are just meant to be protected, to be honored, to be left in peace. Logan understood this now deep in his soul. It was a truth he would carry with him for however long he had left. Some lessons arrive late in life, don't they? But it's always better late than never. January was a brutal, beautiful trial. The pipes froze solid, the power went out twice, and Logan had to dig his way to the woodshed 3 times a week. And oh, he was tired. A tiredness that settled deep in his bones, the kind that sleep can never quite mend. And so he carried on, one sunrise followed by another. Because that is the quiet promise we make to the world, isn't it? It is all we are asked to do, and in the deep hush of night, my dear, when the old cabin would sigh and settle into its bones, he would hear whispers from the forest, so distant, so faint. They could have been the wind or a dream. He chose to believe it was their song on the wind. He held the belief like a precious secret that they were flourishing, that their child was growing wild and strong, that they had found a hidden family, a community woven into the heart of the woods, living a life the world could never imagine, and that my friend was a comfort that settled deeper in his soul than any warmth or word ever could. When February painted the world in shades of gray, it brought a quiet piece of news. The Forest Service had let the mystery go. Insufficient evidence, they said. The file was closed, a story tucked away as the world's attention drifted on. Logan read the small column in the county paper, and a gentle smile touched his lips. He simply folded the paper and set it aside. You see, some mysteries are not meant for solving. Some secrets belong only to the wild heart of the world. And that felt more right, more true than anything else he knew. Then spring returned whispering life back into the world, just as it always does, just as it always will. Logan turned 70 that March, and his children came a rare gift. They stayed for a weekend, offering kind words about the cabin about him. He knew they were stretching the truth, of course, but he understood that some words are not meant for truth, but for kindness. Some untruths are whispered from a place of love. After their car disappeared down the lane, Logan sat on his porch, a silent witness to the forest's gentle awakening. He watched new buds unfurl like tiny fists, heard the returning birds stitch the air with song. It was life defiantly, beautifully rising once more. His mind drifted back through it all, to his beloved Patricia, to a creature named Bear, to a desperate night in the pouring rain, and to the constellation of moments that had become his life. It was never a perfect life, nor an easy one. But it was real. So beautifully, achingly human. A life woven with threads of loss and love and choices that echoed through time, and that he realized was more than enough. It would always, always be enough. A breeze stirred the ancient pines, carrying on its breath the scent of damp earth and new beginnings, the very perfume of possibility, and carried on that same wind a sound so faint it was almost a memory. Logan heard it. The sound, a low, resonant hum. It felt like a song, like a prayer of thanks, like a blessing whispered just for him. A slow smile spread across his face. He closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him, a tide of peace. "Thank you," he whispered to the trees, to the wind, "for trusting me, for letting me be a small part of your impossible story, for reminding an old man what truly matters." Perhaps the wind answered him in its rustling language, or perhaps it was only the wind. It didn't matter. Logan no longer needed to know for sure, because you learn after a while that some questions are not for answering. Some mysteries are meant to be held in the heart, not unraveled by the mind. Logan remained there as the sun bled across the horizon, staying until the evening chill nudged him indoors, until it was simply time to rest. Tomorrow would arrive, or it would not. And either way, it was all right. He had lived. He had mattered. He had been worthy of a trust given by something wild and truly impossible. It's not a bad way to have spent a life, is it? Not bad at all, my friend. The cancer revealed itself in April, in his lungs. Stage 4. The doctor spoke of 6 months, perhaps even less. Logan simply thanked the man, drove home, and sat in his old truck for 20 minutes watching the light change before finally going inside. It's a funny thing, isn't it? You spend your whole life knowing the end will come, but when it finally knocks on your door with an invitation in hand, it still manages to take your breath away. He called his children my dear, and spoke his truth without a veil. Life was too precious now for anything but honesty, its length no longer a promise, but a measure. Their tears fell across the miles, and they offered to come to him. But he gently asked them to wait, promising he would let them know when the time was right. The truth, whispered only to the wind, was that he craved this time for himself to make peace with his own heart on his own terms. The doctor spoke of borrowed days of chemotherapy and radiation, all the ways our modern world tries to bargain with the inevitable. But Logan softly declined. He said his life had been enough, and he wished for the time he had left to be his, not spent in a hospital feeling a sickness worse than his own. The physician pleaded, but Logan's soul was anchored. Some are made to fight the coming tide, you see, and others are made to know the grace in letting it wash over them. And my dear Logan had always been the second kind. May was a tender gift with its warm days and cool nights, the forest a cathedral in full bloom. He spent his hours there walking slowly, breathing deeply, memorizing everything he would miss. The pain was just a whisper then, not yet a shout. A quiet reminder like the soft ticking of a clock counting down the most precious of moments. He would sit and wonder about the next step, about the after, if there was an after to be found. He'd never been a man of faith, not like his Patricia. She found a haven in it, and he in turn found a haven in her peace. That had always been enough, but now standing at the edge of that great mystery himself, he wondered, is there another shore? A continuation of the song? Or is there only silence? He couldn't know, of course. But a quiet hope began to bloom in his heart, not for heaven, but just for something. Some unbroken thread to the people and creatures he had so dearly loved. Some gentle way to check in, to whisper on the wind that he hoped they were okay. A foolish thought, perhaps. But my friend, hope so often is. Then June arrived, and with it visitors he never could have expected. 3 figures appeared at the edge of the clearing, standing in the golden light that filtered through the trees in the late afternoon. Logan was on his porch, where he'd been resting most of the day, conserving what little energy he had. The illness was a swifter current now than he'd been told. He rose, oh so slowly, every joint a quiet protest, his whole body weary. But still he stood. They came closer than they ever had before. Close enough for him to see the texture of their skin, the profound intelligence in their eyes, the deliberate grace in their every move. The young one, though not so young anymore, carried something, stepping forward alone, as its parents waited patiently behind. Logan remained perfectly still, a quiet harbor, letting this moment come to him. It stopped about 10 feet away and held out what it was carrying. It was a bouquet of wildflowers, a constellation of purple and yellow and white gathered and arranged with such obvious tender care. It was an offering, a gift, and in its own silent way, a goodbye. Because somehow they knew. They could feel it. I think the way the wild creatures know, the way the forest itself knows when death is coming to walk amongst its trees. A warmth tightened in Logan's throat. He reached out with a trembling hand and took the flowers. "Thank you." He managed his voice, a raw whisper. "They're beautiful." The young one tilted its head, the very same gesture from that night so many years ago, its eyes still full of curiosity, still full of trust. The father stepped forward, then placing a hand on the young one's shoulder, before looking at Logan with those dark, knowing eyes. No words were exchanged. None were ever needed. In their quiet gaze, I saw they knew. They all understood this was our last goodbye, a silent pact that some debts are paid not in life but in memory, and that gratitude once spoken rings forever in the heart, even after the world goes still. And so, my love, I gave a slow, deliberate nod, a prayer and a blessing all in one. He returned my gesture, a silent farewell, then gathered his precious family. They walked not into the woods but down the open trail, a final gift, so my heart could watch them go safe and whole and together one last time. My eyes held them until they were gone, swallowed by the trees. Only then did my strength fail, and I sank down the wildflowers, a soft weight in my lap, the tears on my face, a warm rain I didn't try to stop. Our old friend Bear wasn't there to witness my sorrow, my dearest Patricia, and you weren't there to offer your comfort. I was alone, just me and my grief, my gratitude, and the quiet truth that my own fading from this world would leave barely a ripple. But those three, I knew in my soul those three would feel the silence. They would remember. And that my friend, that simple knowing, it meant more than anything else in the world. July was a harder season, my love. The pain began to wash over me in relentless waves. The pills from the doctor were like small, brief islands in a vast ocean. My world grew smaller then, shrinking to the quiet corners of this cabin, the worn wood of the porch, and the endless green of the forest beyond the glass. Our daughter flew home to me. For 2 weeks, she filled the silence with her care, with her cooking, and with the soft sounds of her crying when she thought I was asleep. I let her fuss over me, my dear. I let her help because I knew her heart needed to give this care far more than my body needed to receive it. We spoke of the old days, of you, of all the beautifully tangled threads of memory and regret that weave a family together. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here more," she whispered one night as we sat on the porch beneath a sky full of stars. "After Mom was gone, I should have been." "My sweet girl," I told her, "you were out there living your life. That's what we raise our children for, to go and build something new. You did that, and it has always made me so proud." Her tears finally came then, a river of unspoken grief. I just held her hand, saying nothing, letting her sorrow be exactly what it needed to be in that moment. It's a strange truth, isn't it? That some spaces can never be filled, some hurts never quite mend. But love, my dear love, has a way of breathing through it all. Through the years, through the absence, through everything that tries to silence it. When she left, she made me a promise that she would come back, that she would be with me when my time came. And I told her, with all the truth left in me, that that would be a very good thing. August was when the tide truly turned. The pain finally broke free of the medicine's hold. Breathing became a chore. Living became work. I spent my hours in bed, then my gaze fixed on the world outside my window. The faithful forest, the ancient mountains, and the sky that stretched on into forever. Our son came for a visit, bringing his wife. They couldn't stay long. The air in the cabin was too heavy for them. I understood. The coming twilight has always made some people turn toward the sun. We talked of selling this place, of arrangements, of all the earthly paperwork that follows a soul's journey home. I signed my name where they pointed, made the last few decisions, and let them lift the weight of the world from my shoulders. Just don't sell to developers, was my one request. Find a soul who will honor this land, someone who will let it stay wild. He promised he would, and though it may have been a promise for a dying man's peace of mind, the gesture itself was a kindness I held on to. After they were gone, a profound lightness settled in my bones. The books were balanced. All that was left was the quiet patient, waiting. My thoughts drifted to you, my dearest Patricia, to your final days. I remembered the peace you found, the way you let go of this world with such gentle grace. I could only hope to follow your lead with half as much courage. September arrived, and with it hospice. A nurse came 3 times a week, a kind presence who spoke in soft tones of comfort, of dignity, and of the sacred art of letting go. I was so grateful for her. She offered no illusions, no false hope. She was simply a steady hand helping me stay comfortable as this old body of mine made its final, slow betrayal. The forest, my dear, was beginning its slow, beautiful surrender, the leaves turning in a final fiery blush, a testament to the endless dance from life to death and to life again. And Logan watched it all from his window, trying to draw some small comfort from that eternal rhythm, from the quiet truth that the world would keep spinning on its axis, even without him. Most days, you know that solace was enough. But some days it wasn't nearly enough at all. It was late September when the dreams came to him so vivid, so real, they felt less like dreams, and more like memories rising to the surface. He saw his Patricia, young once more, her laughter like music, her beautiful hair catching the sunlight just the way it did on the day they were married. He saw Bear running through the fields whole and healthy again, with a pure, unbridled joy in his every movement. And he saw them, the family, from the heart of the forest. The child now grown and strong, leading others through the deep woods, keeping them safe hidden, and watching them thrive. Logan would awaken from these visions with the salt of tears on his face, my friend, but with a profound and quiet peace settled deep in his heart. Maybe he thought they were only dreams, just the final flickering sparks of a mind preparing for its long rest. Or perhaps they were something more, a whispered glimpse of what waited, a gentle assurance that the things he had loved so dearly were not gone, but had simply changed, moving to a place just beyond his ability to follow. Not yet, anyway. It was on the 1st of October that Logan knew with a quiet certainty. The nurse came in that morning, her hands gentle as she checked on him. But her eyes, my dear, her eyes told him everything, her words did not. "I'll call your family," she said, her voice a soft kindness. Logan just nodded, too weak in his body to argue, too weary in his soul to care. His daughter arrived that afternoon, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a quiet terror, trying with all her might to be strong for him. "It's okay," Logan whispered to her, his voice a fragile thread. "This is natural. My love, this is right." She held his hand in hers and promised with her touch that she wouldn't let go. That night, Logan drifted on a gentle tide between waking and sleeping, the line blurring until time itself seemed to lose all meaning. He heard the sounds from the forest, those low resonant calls. They could have been real, they could have been a memory, or they could have been his own heart, giving him what he needed to hear. "Thank you." He breathed into the stillness, not quite sure who he was speaking to. To Patricia, perhaps. To the forest. To God. To the family he had helped. Maybe it was for all of them, or none of them. In that moment, did it really matter? On the 2nd of October, the morning light came pale and tender through the window. Logan opened his eyes and everything ached. Every part of him felt impossibly heavy. But he was still here, still breathing, still present for one last moment. His daughter was asleep in the chair beside his bed, a picture of exhausted, faithful love. Such a good girl, he thought. He'd raised her right. He knew his Patricia would be so incredibly proud. The pain was a distant echo now. Maybe the medication was finally winning, or maybe it was death itself. It was becoming so hard to tell the difference. Logan looked out the window one last time. The forest stood eternal. The mountains rose against the sky, and the clouds moved overhead in ancient patterns that existed long before we were here, and would exist long after we are gone. He was a whisper in the grand story, wasn't he? Just for a heartbeat for one fleeting moment in time. But oh, he was here. He mattered. He left his mark on souls, and they in turn left their beautiful marks on his. It was a good life, a truly good life, all things considered. Then his breath began to change, my dear. It softened, slowed to a whisper. Every breath in was a quiet effort, and every breath out released so much more than air. His heart turned to his beloved Patricia. Perhaps she was waiting for him. Perhaps not. But whatever the truth, he knew he was about to find out. He thought of Bear, that dear, loyal friend, of that steady, silent presence, a love so pure and freely given without a single question asked. His mind drifted to that impossible night drenched in rain. A birth that defied all logic, a trust that should never have been given. The sacred feeling of being chosen, of finally feeling worthy. And then the flowers. He could almost see them, purple and yellow and white, standing sentinel in the vase beside him. Dried and fragile now, paper-thin ghosts of what they were, but they were still there. They remained. They were his evidence, you see, the proof that it all happened, a memory you could hold in your hand. Just then his daughter stirred, and in that instant she knew. Her voice was just a breath. Dad. My dear Logan. He tried so hard to give her a smile, and what he managed was something so close, so full of love, it was more than enough. I love you, he whispered, his voice a thread of sound. If these were to be his last words, he would make them a blessing. Oh, I love you too, she answered through her tears, her hand holding his so tightly. So very, very much. And with that, my friend Logan closed his eyes one last time, and he simply let go. And in the quiet that followed from somewhere far away, a sound drifted on the air. It was low and deep, a resonance that felt like a song, like a final goodbye, like a note of gratitude echoing across the great, beautiful divide. The forest held his memory in its heart. The ancient mountains would not forget him. And deep in the wild places where magic still breathes, 3 sacred figures stood at the edge of a clearing, their voices rising in a song of sorrow for the one human who dared to be kind when the world swore such a thing could never be. They sang as the sun bled across the horizon, and they sang as the first stars appeared, until the forest itself seemed to drink their sorrow, transforming it into a new kind of life that would forever whisper through the trees and sleep in the soil. It became a memory of compassion, a timeless reminder that some bonds are woven from a thread that runs deeper than species, deeper than logic, deeper than all the rules we think we know. Because you see, Logan Mitchell had lived, and he had mattered, and he had been found worthy of a trust born of the wild and the impossible, and in the end, my dear friend, that was everything. It was his daughter who found the flowers. Dried, yes, but they had been preserved with such care, arranged with a love you could feel. She asked, of course, but the nurse had no answers, and his son could only shake his head, for it was a secret not his to tell. You see, these flowers, they were like nothing that grew in our world. The way they were formed, their impossible size, By all earthly logic, they were beautifully, perfectly wrong. And yet, my goodness, they were beautiful. So undeniably, breathtakingly beautiful. His daughter kept them pressing, each one between the pages of his favorite book, a mystery he must have read dozens of times about things that have no business existing, but somehow wonderfully do. It just seemed right, you know. His funeral was a small affair, just as he would have wanted. Family, a handful of friends from town, and the kind veterinarian Logan had worked with for so many years. They laid him to rest beside his Patricia beneath the arms of the great pine tree with the very same view they had both cherished so dearly. He was a good man. The pastor set his eyes on his notes, for he had never truly known the soul of Logan. He gave his life to helping creatures in need. He loved with his whole heart. He lived a life of integrity. Every word of it was true, my love, and yet none of it was ever enough. Because how, my dearest, can you ever truly capture what mattered most? How can mere words hold the weight of moments that shaped a soul when they were never meant to be spoken, only felt? You just can't. You can only feel them in your heart, carry them with you always, and hope they resonate like a soft echo in the lives that follow. Logan's daughter, his sweet girl. She stayed in that little cabin for a week, sifting through the pieces of his life, a quiet dance of deciding what to hold on to, what to give away, and what to gently release. And then she found it. His journal. Its leather cover was soft and worn from his hands, filled with his quiet thoughts on the creatures and the sky, all the little wonders of a life lived close to the earth. But the last few pages, they were different, my friend. They began 3 years ago in the soft rains of April. He wrote of a night drenched in rain, of a meeting that defied all logic, of a birth that was a miracle against nature, and of a family that by all rights should never have been. She drank in every single word, then read them once more, her heart caught between two worlds, wondering if her dear father had lost his way, or if he had found something truly magical. In the end, she never found a simple answer. But she held on to the journal. She kept the pressed flowers, and she treasured the dried feather she discovered in his nightstand, a feather too grand for any known bird, woven in a way she had never seen before. Was it proof? Or a beautiful dream? Or perhaps, my love, it was something sacred in between. She never spoke of it to another soul. It was her father's secret, a precious weight that now rested upon her own heart. Eventually, the cabin found new hands, a young couple from Portland, both artists with gentle souls searching for quiet, for a touch of the untamed world. And Logan's daughter. She made them promise. A promise to cherish the land, to let the forest breathe, and to remember they were only visitors in a home that belonged to something far more ancient than us. They gave her their word, and you could see the truth of it in their eyes. She could only hope they would honor that promise, hope that her father's quiet legacy wouldn't be lost to concrete and progress. But you know, my dear, you can never control what comes next. None of us ever can. All we can ever do is offer our best in the here and now, and pray that it is enough, trusting that the love we give ripples out into the world in ways we may never get to see. Winter returned to the Cascades, blanketing the trails in a soft white hush. Ice like jewels clung to every branch, and the forest fell into that deep, peaceful silence, as if the whole world were dreaming. But oh, in the secret heart of the woods, where our feet seldom tread, life went on. 3 shadows moved through the snow. And then there were 4. A new little one had arrived that autumn, so small and precious, taking its first steps in a world that would never even know its name. And that little family, my love, they blossomed. They found others of their kind weaving together a small secret community hidden and oh so careful, surviving beautifully against all odds. And they never forgot Logan. They told his story in whatever beautiful way their people tell stories, passing down the memory of the one human who offered a hand when no help should have been possible. The man who guarded their secret when the world would have given anything for just a glimpse. The one who chose compassion over cold curiosity, who chose to protect them rather than be praised for discovering them. That memory became a living, breathing thing carried forward like a warm light through generations, who would never know the face of the old man who gave them their future. But they would know his name. They would know his heart. They would know that not all of our kind are a threat, that some hearts can be trusted, that kindness can bloom even in a world that has shown them so much to fear. And that my dearest friend was Logan's true legacy. It wasn't etched in stone or printed in headlines or bound in scientific journals. It lived in the quiet moments. It breathed in the hidden lives. It was written in the choices of creatures the world swore were only a myth. It was the living proof that compassion is what truly matters, that simply being there for someone matters, that having the courage to stay when every part of you screams to run away. Well, my love, that matters more than anything in this world. And so the spring came back to us, my dear, just as it always has, just as it always will. The artists who came to call Logan's cabin home. They planted a garden full of life, hung a feeder for the little birds, and walked the forest paths with a quiet reverence, not with the heavy foot of conquest. Sometimes, my love, they'd find the strangest tracks pressed into the earth, hear whispers on the wind they couldn't place, and catch glimpses of shadows that danced in ways they shouldn't, and they kept it all locked in their hearts. You see, some secrets know their own kind, and some mysteries, well, they ask us to be their guardians. It was a truth they either knew in their bones, or one the forest gently taught them. On those hushed nights with the woods humming its ancient song and the mountains etched like ink against the stars, they would sit on that porch on Logan's porch and feel a presence beside them. It wasn't a frightening feeling, my love, but a quiet whisper that the world was so much vaster, so much more wondrous and beautifully strange than they had ever dared to dream. It was the feeling that ancient things still lived in the wild heart of the world, that a quiet magic endured, and that wonder hadn't vanished. It was only hiding, waiting for souls wise enough to let it be. And darling, they were those souls, or at least they were trying with all their hearts to become them. And I just know that would have filled Logan's heart with so much joy, with so much pride. The years slipped by as they always do. For most who knew him, the memory of Logan softened into a whisper. His children grew, and their own children were born into a world that had never known his touch. Life, my dear, simply continued its eternal dance forward. But here in the heart of the forest, the memory of him remained a thing more resilient and deeper than any human recollection. You see, some debts of kindness are too vast for one lifetime. Some gratitude becomes the song of a people, and some stories become the very ground on which a future is built. The family Logan had saved grew into elders, and they taught their young ones the deep wisdom of survival, passing down the sacred knowledge that had been their shield for generations. And always, always they spoke of the kind human, the one who chose to remain, who gifted them life when all hope was lost, who held their secret safe when the world would have torn it all away. They taught their children how to see kindness in a heart, how to know the difference between a human who brought danger and one of those rare, precious souls who offered a gentle hand. They whispered to them that not every stranger is a foe, and that sometimes, in the deepest dark, a light appears from the most unexpected corner of the world, and that my love was Logan's true legacy, not just for one family, but for all of them, for every hidden soul trying to find its way in a world that had forgotten how to believe in mystery. He had reminded them, he had reminded all of us, that compassion was not just a memory, that trust could be built, and that some human hearts still beat in time with what truly matters. That gift, my darling, was worth more than any stone monument, more than any applause, more than all the fame or fortune or cold, hard proof the world could ever offer. Because it was the very thing that kept them alive, that kept them safe, that kept the fragile flame of hope burning, the belief that we could live together, if only we were brave enough to choose it. Decades melted away. The cabin found new keepers, and then new ones again. But it was as if an unseen hand was guiding each one, choosing them with the utmost care. There were always people who cherished the land, who understood the sanctity of boundaries, who would hear whispers of strange things in the woods and choose to hold those secrets gently in their hearts. Perhaps it was only coincidence, my dear, or perhaps it was something more. The forest, you see, never tells its secrets aloud, but the family they flourished, their community blossomed slowly, so carefully, but it blossomed all the same. New little ones came into the world, new lives taking their first breath, an impossible miracle made real by a choice made so long ago by an old veterinarian who simply heard a cry for help and chose to answer. And that, my love, is how the world truly changes. Not with thunderous applause or in the bold ink of history books. It happens in the quiet moments, in the gentle decisions of a single heart, choices that send ripples out through time in ways we can never fully know. A choice like that, the one Logan Mitchell made, it doesn't just end, you know. It ripples out, touching years and lifetimes, reaching souls he would never even meet. And that, my friend, is where the true magic lies. It isn't found in the fantastic, but in the quiet bonds that form between us. It's in the heart's decision to help, to trust, to offer kindness when it would be so much simpler to be afraid. It's that very thing that becomes our salvation, isn't it? For every one of us, human or not. And I have to believe that somewhere in the great unknown that follows this life, if such a place exists. Logan felt it. He felt the truth of his choice, resonating, a quiet assurance that the family was safe, that his promise had been honored. He knew his life had been a full one, that his choices had weight and meaning, and that he was leaving behind a love that would endure. What a beautiful way to be remembered, don't you think? There's nothing better, really, because when all is said and done, what else truly matters? All we can do is live with our whole hearts and love without reservation. We try to be good people. We lend a hand. We hold sacred the trust others place in us. We shelter what is precious and hope to leave this world just a little kinder than we found it. That is the deepest hope any of our hearts can hold. Logan did all of that, my dear, and so much more. And so in the ancient heart of the Cascades, where secrets sleep and wild souls still roam free, the memory of him breathes on. It isn't carved in stone or cast in bronze or written in fading ink. No, it lives in the warmth of a breath, in the rhythm of a heartbeat, in the laughter of children who are here only because one man chose love when the world told him to be afraid, and that my love was enough. It would always be more than enough. It was, in fact, everything. Can you feel it? The wind is whispering through the pines tonight, carrying the scent of coming rain, of rich earth, and of life beginning anew. And if you listen closely, you can hear a sound drifting through the trees, a low, resonant hum, almost like a song of gratitude, perhaps, a song of remembrance. The forest holds its breath to listen. The mountains hold the memory. And in that sacred space between what we know and what we dream, a certain magic endures. It's not the kind you read about in fairy tales. It's the magic of true compassion, of a bond that transcends words, of that breathtaking moment when two souls see the light in each other. It's the magic that happens when you choose to build a bridge instead of a wall. To offer your hand, to open your heart, to stay when every instinct tells you to run. That, my dearest, is the only magic that has ever truly mattered. And it is still alive, I promise you. It breathes in these mountains. It sings in these trees. It finds a home in the secret places where the wild things are. It's just waiting patiently for the next soul brave enough to listen when the wild whispers their name, hoping they will find the courage to choose as Logan once did, hoping they will see with their heart what is truly essential, hoping they too will keep the faith, shelter the sacred, and always, always choose love. For that, my friend, is how the story breathes, how it always finds its way forward. With a single choice, a fleeting moment, a connection that bridges the space between two souls. Until this world of ours is no longer measured by what we can prove or conquer or own, but by the wonder in our eyes, the mercy in our hearts, and the quiet grace of seeing one another across every line someone tried to draw between us. This is the heart of Logan Mitchell's story. And in a way, my friend, it's the heart of all our stories. It's that eternal choice we all face between the cold grip of fear and the open hand of faith, between taking and giving, between shattering the mystery and cherishing it. And he, my friend, chose with a courage that was true, a wisdom that was deep, and a heart that was completely whole. And I promise you, this forest, it remembers. It will hold that memory forever. For as long as the wild heart of this world beats in these sacred places, they will remember the one human who came not to take but to help. And perhaps, just perhaps, that beautiful memory will whisper to other souls, calling forth other helpers, other guardians, other hearts, brave enough to look beyond what they were told to see, what is truly there. At least that's the hope we hold on to, isn't it? It is the hope that always lights the way. Because this world aches for more souls like Logan Mitchell, more souls willing to kneel in the mud, to stand in the pouring rain, to choose compassion when every instinct screams to run away. Our world is thirsty for those moments of impossible grace, for more connections that defy all logic, yet blossom into being, for more proof that the soft light of kindness can never be extinguished by the dark, and for more stories like this one to gently remind us of what truly matters. This is one of those sacred stories. It is Logan's story, a tale of a tender-hearted veterinarian, a family that was never meant to be, and the one choice that saved them all. And you know this is a true story. The deepest truths don't ask for our permission to exist, but maybe it asks for your heart to be open to it, for you to consider that this world is so much vaster, wilder, and more beautiful than we were ever led to believe. It asks you to imagine that mystery is still woven into the fabric of things, that a quiet magic endures, and that we can still reach across the most impossible spaces to find one another. That is the truth. Logan Mitchell lived the song, his life sang the testament of his every choice. And that truth, my friend, it still echoes. You can feel it in the whispers of these mountains, in the breath of these forests, in every wild place where small hidden things continue to thrive. If you listen with your heart, you just might hear it, a sound like the softest singing, like a chorus of gratitude, like a love that remembers. That's them. The family he found, the community he saved, the impossible lives that go on, all because one man chose to open his heart. And that right there is his legacy. It's the only kind that ever truly matters. It isn't carved in stone or written in dusty records or captured as cold, hard proof. It lives on in every breath, in every heartbeat, in the beautiful ongoing story of life itself. in the simple, sacred fact of their existence, that they continue to flourish, that their memory holds. And my dear friend, that is more than enough. In truth, it is everything. It is the only real legacy any of us can ever hope to leave in our wake. A world made just a little softer with compassion, a little braver in protecting its mysteries, a little more able to see past fear and find connection. Logan Mitchell gave us that, against all the odds, in spite of everything, and the forest you see, it remembers. It will hold his story forever. For as long as the trees reach for the sun and the mountains stand as silent witnesses and wild things breathe the air of freedom, they will whisper the name of the old man who offered them kindness, and they will sing their gratitude like a hymn to the stars, tonight, tomorrow, and for all the tomorrows to come. That is the story. That is the truth. That is the beautiful legacy of one choice made on one rain-swept night in the Cascades, a choice whose echo rippled through time, touching generations, blessing countless lives we will never know, a choice that proved the one thing our hearts all desperately need to believe, that compassion is what truly matters, that kindness is the ultimate victory, that helping the vulnerable, even when they seem impossible, even when they fill us with terror, even when they defy all that we believe we know, is always the right choice. Always. Without a single exception. That was the truth Logan Mitchell lived by. It was his gift. It was his song. And now it has become yours too. To carry in your heart. To remember. To let it be your guide when you face your own impossible moments. When you hear that call for help from a soul the world says should not exist. When you find yourself standing at that quiet crossroads where fear and faith meet. When you must decide whether to turn away or to stand your ground. Remember Logan Mitchell. Remember the choice he made. Remember what mattered most of all. And then, my friend, choose with all your heart. Choose the path of compassion. Choose the warmth of connection. Choose to stay. Because that is how we save one another. How we save our own souls. How we begin to heal this world. One beautifully impossible moment at a time. It happens just one choice at a time, my friend. One single beautiful act of grace at a time. We keep going. You see, until the shadows finally part, until every mystery is held with reverence, and until all the wild, beautiful things in this world are safe from harm. We do it all until we can remember deep in our bones the truth that our dear Logan always knew. He knew that we are never truly alone, that a sense of wonder will always find a way to bloom, and that real magic, the truest kind, lives in that breathtaking space between what we fear and what we choose to believe. And he understood that choosing to have faith, to trust in one another, to lead with compassion, was the only thing in this life that ever truly mattered at all. And that, my friend, is the whole story. It is complete, it is true, and it is eternal. I hope with all my heart that it lives inside of you, just as it so beautifully lived in Logan. May you be the one to carry its light forward into the world. And when your own moment arrives, my dear, may you choose with all the wisdom of your heart. Because that moment you know, that moment of impossible choice, it comes for every single one of us. And when it does, I want you to remember this story. Remember our Logan, and remember all the beautiful possibilities that unfold when we choose what is right. Remember, this world aches for more helpers, for more protectors, for more souls willing to kneel in the mud and stand firm in the pouring rain for what they believe in. Please be one of those souls, because everything this whole impossible, breathtaking, and sometimes terrifying world, it truly depends on it.